we will be present, so don't hesitate to ask. Good luck.
Very good. No, all clear. Thank you very much. So when are we? When do we know we're online? You tell us.
You are online. There are already
We
50
have started.
attendees.
Great stuff. Well, then welcome to everyone to this session on the role of the bioeconomy in Europe's recovery, Europe's resilience and recovery facility, Europe's Green Deal, as the recovery very much is also about driving our green and digital transformations, making Europe more resilient, recovering, of course, from the pandemic, both in society and in the economy. Europe's bioeconomy strategy is a policy which has deep impact across a number of other policy areas, and that is what we want to explore with all of you this morning. And the discussions will then, of course, feed also into the preparation of Horizon Europe, and also in the work happening right now in the Commission on the recovery and the resilient and recovery facility particularly. This is in two steps. The first part of the session will be a moment between Wolfgang Butcher, Wolfgang Hay, and myself. I think, Wolfgang, it's safe to say that you are the most innovative and research-minded Director General for Agriculture ever in the European Commission. So I'm really delighted to kick it off with you in a moment. And after our conversation, this will then be followed by a panel discussion led by Peter Wertheim, who is leading the team here in DG Research and Innovation on the bioeconomy. And Peter, I will leave it to you to introduce the panel and the panel members. Wolfgang, if we can start. Of course, the pandemic is still very much with us, which is why we are hosting these Research and Innovation Days digitally. I mean, we are already at 29,700 people. So there is, as I said this morning, a silver lining. It's much more open than we were able to do it last year. So the pandemic is still very, very much present, but we, of course, now trying to build a resilient recovery, and this notion of building back better, or rather bouncing forward. I prefer the image of bouncing forward myself, and that really means ensuring that we don't invest anymore in environmentally destructive areas or climate irrelevant or climate impactful areas. So how do you see, Wolfgang, as you are a key actor in your own policy area, how do you see the bioeconomy in this building back better concept?
Thank you very much, Eric, for your kind words. And indeed, the question arises what role bioeconomy plays with respect to the challenges which we are facing. And I think everybody agrees that we are facing big challenges in terms of climate change, in terms of degradation of our ecosystems, of our land. And this requires that we seek new ways of producing and consuming resources that respect our planetary boundaries. And this also implies that we have to move away from an extensive use of fossil and mineral resources. As you have pointed out, the European Commission has launched the Green Deal exactly to create such a new growth strategy that ensures a competitive, climate neutral, resource efficient and sustainable economy, and it supports it greatly through the next MFF and through the new next generation EU funding. Now, against the background of these challenges, what is the potential of the bioeconomy? I think we are sure that deploying a sustainable bioeconomy can help tackle in a holistic manner the economic, ecological, and the social aspects of the Green Deal. Let me just give some of those areas where we think that, in particular with respect to agriculture, bioeconomy will play a key role. There is first and most important a sustainable food production system through the use of agroecological practices, precision farming, more organic farming. More closer to the bioeconomy discussion, we need new business models for farmers and foresters. And I think here bioeconomy indeed offers new opportunities for farmers and foresters to sequester and maintain carbon into soil and biomass. This will create new income and at the same time will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And then thirdly, there is the circular-based economy that should be supported. And in our area, it's in particular sustainable types of biogas and biomethane production based on intermediary crops, based on residues in agriculture, in particular also from food and beverage industry. So a sustainable bioeconomy based on co-products, byproducts, waste and residues from agriculture will, on the one hand, drastically improve the environmental climate performance, but really offers also new business opportunities for the primary production for our farmers and the rural areas alike.
Yeah, you have, Wolfgang, in fact, you have put the bioeconomy as one of the objectives of the future common agricultural policy. This, I understand, is new. So how do you expect that, member states which are delivering the common agricultural policy, how do you expect that they can use in these rural communities the instruments of the common agricultural policy to foster the innovative bioeconomies which you just described? So how will you do it? And do we team up a bit with Horizon Europe? Or how do you see that?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, bioeconomy type of measures are already eligible in our today's CAP, in particular in the second pillar, the rural development pillar. But the proposal of the Commission for the future CAP after 2020 really recognizes the opportunity for our rural areas and for the farmers in further deploying bioeconomy more holistically and more systematically, I think. And this is why, as you have pointed out, bioeconomy is part as one of the 9 specific objectives of the common agricultural policies. Now, what could we imagine should be promoted even better through the use of support measures, in particular from the second pillar under the new CAP? I give you just some examples. In the forestry sector, it would be long-term recyclable construction materials produced from the main part of the biomass, a large portfolio of products produced from pulpwood, including textiles, bioplastics, and I think we have already first experiences in this in the context of our joint undertaking, bioenergy produced from the lower quality wood tops. But I think what is also important is that the bioeconomy can also provide innovative solutions to support maintaining or improving our ecosystems and biodiversity. An example, circular business models based on the valorization of unavoidable waste. I mean, agriculture produces waste, can make a vital contribution to protecting the environment, but also creating diverse value streams by transforming a burden into an opportunity. And we all know about what kind of burden we are discussing in the context of agriculture. It's the production of biogas from manure and agro-food waste and residues. So I think what is key for us in agriculture is that we really show and have good examples for our farmers to develop new value chains. They are used to food production, not their core business. And I think the question now is, are we really able to incentivize our farmers to use these new opportunities, new business models to create income in addition to the primary production? I think what is important in this context is also that we leave a lot of freedom to member states when they come forward with their strategic plans, because the next CAP will create the national strategic plans of member states where they have to put in particular the priorities. And we together, Jean-Eric, when I have been in DG Research and Innovation, we have put a lot of emphasis on promoting bioeconomy, in particular at the regional and local level. So I think it's hugely important that those decision makers, when we are designing the next content for the national strategic plans, which contains the eligible measures, that they take into account or they create opportunities for supporting bioeconomy related investments.
Yeah, thanks, Wolfgang. You probably know that this morning we had the session on Horizon Europe missions, and we had Kees Wehrmann presenting the outcome of the work of the mission board on the soil mission, and then Commissioner Wojciechowski reacted. I mean, I must say particularly positively. They had real ownership on his side, and I know on your side on this mission. I mean, we don't need to discuss the mission per se, but just to illustrate, the missions are really about providing a link between research and innovation outcomes, so knowledge, solutions, and then connecting them to public policy. So how do you see the research and innovation portfolio, Horizon Europe, helping you drive these resilient and sustainable bioeconomies, I mean, particularly in rural areas? What can we do for you?
Indeed, I think, Jean-Eric, research and innovation are critical levers to really exploit all the opportunities related to bioeconomy. And over Horizon 2020, we have already made a lot of use of research and innovation funding to, in particular, address the challenges related to bioeconomy and to translate it in real life. Now, I will make the error that many people, or some of us did, when we were in research and innovation, we were talking about the number of projects that we have funded and the amounts that we have dispersed. And I think we have substantially contributed in the sense that 315 agriculture and food related projects related to bioeconomy were funded with 1.15 billion. But I will come back afterwards with an example that shows that really this money is also spent on extremely useful and forward-looking projects. Now, what will be more in Horizon Europe compared to Horizon 2020? I think one point you have already pointed out is new working modalities, new concepts like the missions. And as you have talked about our mission, which is caring for soil and caring for life, we really consider that this is at the very heart of the bioeconomy strategy, because healthy soils are the foundation for all sustainable biomass production. Without healthy soils, we will not have anything to use in terms of biomass intake. Now, what are the avenues that we are exploiting for the future, what we intend to exploit for the future research agenda? First, the bioeconomy will be supported with a view to deal with climate change, evidently, while providing new markets for farmers and foresters. That's the point I've already raised. Still, if you look at the question, how to do this is not so self-evident. Just take the question of carbon sinking and carbon sequestration. What are the methodologies to count the carbon that is sequestrated? How do you remunerate it? Is there a market for it? So there is still a lot of research required. Secondly, I've already referred to, we consider that the Circular Bio-Based Europe partnership will be again an important tool to support the development of innovative value chains in which primary productions, and I hope that this will be addressed better as in the past. Primary producers capture a fair share of the profit generated, because if we want farmers to take up these new business models, there needs to be something in terms of remuneration and in terms of gains. And finally, digitization, which is also important for the bioeconomy sector, will be evidently also important to scaling up precision agriculture and forestry, Internet of Things, and big data. Agroecology are other types. So, in short, I think all research and innovation activities we have funded and are still funding, from basic research to innovation and demonstration project, aim to realize working business opportunities, in which value can be generated from underutilized resources today, like wastes and residues. But still, I think a key question in all our research also needs to be even the bioeconomy or the use of bio waste needs to respect the planetary boundaries. And since these substances are also limited, I think it's very important that in the research we focus on those uses that provide the most added value in terms of public interest, if you so want. Now, for example, just to give you an impression of ongoing projects, we have Horizon 2020 projects like Power for Bio and Bio Rural, which develops a catalog of available technologies and tested solutions suitable for the deployment in rural areas to support regions across the EU. And I think that brings me back on the question on the territorial nature of the challenge which we are facing. We need to be sure that in all places, geographical territories that have the potential to use biomass can be used to create jobs and growth also in rural areas. So I think research and innovation will play a key role also in that respect.
Wolfgang, vielen Dank. Thanks a lot. Peter, I hand over to you to now explore that indeed in the panel. Over to you, Peter. So the panel is coming on stream. Oh. Comment est-ce que je sors?
directors for having introduced this topic in such an excellent way. I hope you can hear me now. Elisabetta, can you hear me? Very, very good. Excellent to have heard that the common agriculture policy is a concrete rule through which action in the economy is supported. Take-home message is needs to be justified and programmed also through the CAP strategic plans, the national programming tools, which each member state will have to develop. Now we have 40 minutes left for the second part of this session, which will be a panel debate. We'll have no keynote presentations, but rather short statements of the panelists. I would also already like to indicate that we have a chat bar in which you can also pose questions and comments. The main question we want to follow up on now in the debate is what is the role of the bioeconomy in the process of recovery, and can it make a special contribution, and have member states already developed ideas, and what could the Commission do to support that bioeconomy action will feature prominently in the recovery package. We have invited 4 distinguished colleagues to join us in this discussion. Let me very briefly introduce you. We have Fabio Fava as a chair of the Italian Bioeconomy Governing Board of the Presidency of Council of Ministers. We invited Professor Fava because of his specific expertise and involvement on bioeconomy policies in Italy. Secondly, we have invited Christine Lang from Germany, who is an entrepreneur in biotechnology and a consultant on the bioeconomy to the German government. You served also as a co-chair of the German Bioeconomy Council, and you are one of the initiators of the Global Bioeconomy Summit, which will take place in mid-November. And therefore, we invited you because you also know the bioeconomy in one of the larger member states. We have also invited Bana Kovac, a well-known colleague in the bioeconomy sphere. He's currently working as a counselor at the permanent representation of Hungary. We invited him because he has also been appointed as a Secretary General of the BioEast initiative, which is specifically representing the bioeconomy in the areas of the 11 Central and Eastern European countries. We fourthly have invited Elisabetta Palzi, my colleague, who is head of unit for the bioeconomy at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. She has coordinated the development of the 2018 EU bioeconomy strategy and is currently in charge of the EC Knowledge Center for the bioeconomy. Let us start with Professor Fabio Fava. Professor Fava, Italy has developed a bioeconomy-focused recovery plan. What are some of the innovative bioeconomy solutions of this recovery plan? And could those solutions be deployed on a larger scale also across Europe?
Thank you very much, Peter, for the introduction and for the invitation. And we developed recently an implementation action plan associated with the national bioeconomy strategy. And where we working on the implementation action plan, the lockdown came, and so we stopped our work. And this allowed us also to see and assess on daily basis the crucial role played by bioeconomy in our life, but also the special resilience of the sectors composing bioeconomy, which lost turnover and employment, but much less than any other prominent national sector that we have in our country. So then, of course, we finalized the implementation action plan by including a session focusing on the role of bioeconomy in the recovery. But then we decided to also prepare a short document in Italian addressed for the presidents of Council of our ministers, the core ministers, in which we put few actions, concrete actions, to guarantee a safe, prompt, and also fair recovery of our country through implementation of circular economy. In this document, we identified 4 major national industrial initiatives that we are calling flagships, ready to be implemented by the public and the private sectors together in many regions in our country, by also putting some private money for doing it. The first action was promoted by the National Consortium of Composting Industries. They proposed to revamp, but also construct new infrastructure for the recovery and the integrated valorization, chemical, material, and fuels of organic waste, wastewater effluents that we are collecting at national level. The second initiative came from the cluster Green Chemistry, addressed to interconnect efficiently large national, marginal, and rural lands that we have in the country with the multi-input, multi-product biorefineries that we have already in place. So we plan to launch, but also to connect these areas with former industrial sites, former oil refineries that have to be reconverted. They can be reconverted through biorefineries. The third initiative came from the 2 largest national farmer cooperatives in the agri-food sector that we have in our country, the one making wine, the other one producing and processing meat. They decided to work together for developing integrated strategies for the valorization of byproducts, with also the production of ingredients, food ingredients, but also the valorization of the biowaste, the waste that they are making. The last initiative is coming from the associations of the fishery industry, 2 port fishery industries that we have in our country, along with 2 port authorities and some other private actors. Initiative addressed to improve the productivity, sustainability, but also the quality of product of the fishery and aquaculture in the Adriatic-Ionian micro-region. This through the optimization of the value chains, but also through the cleanup of the sea, the recovery of waste, the recovery of plastics coming from that area, with the put on place of new value chains for the valorization of the recovered plastics, the recovered waste. So 4 actions, simple, concrete, ready to be implemented, able to exploit, make more robust the existing value chain, regenerating the environment, providing benefit to the territories and the local communities. Of course, we also planned other additional actions enabling the implementation of these large flagships. Define the ecological limits of each of these actions, monitor their impact on national biodiversity ecosystem, revise existing or create new tailored policies, and the waste, for example, Salva Mare decree, the use of composting material in agriculture, and then define or adopt standards, labels, incentives for the generated byproducts, and engage citizens, consumers in this process, in the implementation of those flagships, and educate, train personnel working in those sectors. Thank you. This is the essential points.
Thank you very much, Professor Faber. That's excellent to hear the concrete proposals for actions and the examples you have listed in Italy. That is very informative. Let's now turn to Germany. Christine Lang, you know Germany very well as an entrepreneur, as someone who is also providing advice to the German government on the bioeconomy. How important is the bioeconomy in the German context? Also, that Germany has the EU presidency, and what should be done in Germany to put the bioeconomy really also at the heart of the recovery process in such a big member state. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Yes, actually, first of all, I'm happy to say that indeed, EU presidency of Germany is giving us a good chance to put bioeconomy in a focus. So what the German EU presidency has already in focus in general is sustainability and climate change mitigation. And they also recognize that bioeconomy is a strategic tool and an key element to change current ways of acting. So is this just something they say, or are there some indication that indeed that is the case? And I would say, yes, there are indications. So one of those is that we do have an adapted and, let's say, new bioeconomy strategy starting beginning of 2020. So it was installed before the COVID crisis, but still it holds some very important points. It says the sustainable economy needs bioeconomy. And I think this will be proved right over the next years and months. The bioeconomy strategy also says that renewable resources and biological knowledge is at the basis. So I think that is a very good point on that. A second indication that bioeconomy is in the focus is that we do have this year the so-called bioeconomy science year. We always have science years, but this year, and actually also extended to 2021 due to the crisis, we have the science year of bioeconomy, which means that communicating on bioeconomy, education on bioeconomy is key to the education and research ministry. So we will really have the chance to focus on bioeconomy. What does it mean? We will show bioeconomy, we teach about it, we talk about it, and we discuss it. So I think this should bring a quite new development into the public of the bioeconomy on this year and next year. Now, and the third thing that is an indication that bioeconomy is key factors, and Peter has already mentioned it, we will have the Global Bioeconomy Summit in November. And this will be hosted and financed again by Germany. So third time, 2015, 2018, and now 2020. Of course, this year in a virtual format due to the pandemic. But I think this will even give us more reach out with bioeconomy. So this will bring together politicians, scientists, industry, society from all over the world. And that means also that Germany is aware that bioeconomy is something that is not a national issue, but it also international issue. And we will definitely work on that. So, and all this to be seen in the German EU presidency. This is all in the context. And bioeconomy indeed has been identified as strategic pillar in the research and innovation program, also for the presidency. Now, are we doing enough? What should be done more if we are talking about this? So what is already done? I said education, communication. We have a very good research funding in Germany all the years long, and we know about international collaboration. What we still need is a clear roadmap that needs to be done. But is it all that's missing? Not really. So let's have 2 or 3 points I would like to stress what is missing and where is the gap. The first one is looking at policy. I would say what we need is a political commitment that really biotechnology is a knowledge-based pillar and that we embrace innovation. Because one of the main gaps what we see now is that we do a lot of research and we have a lot of small scale things, but we need the next step. And that is where we are now, from small scale into big scale. And I think we need a number of stakeholders to put it into the big scale. And I think that's one of the points that we need to have into. That is also together with industry. Industry wants to invest, but we probably need a much long-term commitment on that to get a sustainable economy running. And finally, I would say what else is done. I think we should look at the market. It's the consumer that gets into the focus over the next years. So what economy needs to be something that we experience, we can communicate, and we want the consumer to use. And just as a final word on that, I would say listen to what the consumer says. We just had a recent survey that said that about 30% of the citizens, of the consumers, want a sustainable economy, and they see the current crisis, economic crisis, as the way to step forward. So maybe if we listen to the market and have this market pull, that is one way forward. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Christine Lang, for that presentation, saying we need to listen to consumers, we need to scale up policies, innovation plays a very important role, and also flagging that the bioeconomy is certainly a very important part of Germany's overall policy approach. It's well enshrined in the scientific community, but it's also part of the German policy approach overall. Thank you very much for that insight. Let me now turn directly to Bana Kovac and ask you, Mr. Kovac, what are, in your view, the opportunities of the bioeconomy could provide specifically also to the countries in Central and Eastern Europe, also in the context of the recovery process, and what role could the EU instruments play to provide support also to that region? Please, Bana.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. I am very pleased to be here. As you were expressing, I am not sitting here as a Hungarian or representing Hungary, but more the 11 Central and Eastern European countries who are taking part in the governmental initiative, which we call Bioeast Initiative. Yes, the Bioeast Initiative is helping those countries to develop their knowledge-based bioeconomies. But of course, I am also representing, and by this I'm representing the opinion of the board members who are coming from the different ministries from these countries. So I will express here a little bit more a general view on what we could do and what is the role of the bioeconomy in this post-COVID period. Actually, it's a very difficult period. It's difficult for the Central Eastern European countries, of course, because we are facing, and let me generalize a little bit. On one hand, the country started to discuss about self-sufficiency. On the other hand, there is a big agenda on the sustainability, and it's the role of the bioeconomy on this discussion. It's very much debated, and we at the board immediately after the problem was raised in May, we started to work out position paper which emphasized the role of the green investments, the role of the bioeconomy in this period. It is important to emphasize because the Central Eastern European countries are moderate innovators. They are not the ones who are stepping immediately into innovative actions, and their economy is still based on traditional approaches and traditional sectors. So in light of all this, I must emphasize emphasize that we very much pushed that the bioeconomy basically could be the bridge between when we are talking about self-sufficiency and we are talking about sustainability. And moreover, we should not talk about national self-sufficiency, but we have to interconnect the European market. We have to connect the western part with the eastern part of Europe. We have to connect those countries which can produce biomass, but there is a lack of investment in the sector. So in this respect, the recovery fund and the coming funds, EU funds, they have a big role. But let me just before entering and answering exactly your question, just to name it the importance of the macro-regional initiative. Because normally these countries they have their own traditional approach in the policy development, but due to the macro-regional initiative, the BioEs, they started to look to each other. They started to cooperate, discuss the ministries, and by this initiative, the interministerial discussion in each country about the role of the bioeconomy started. It was started in the past year, and it's continued. So in this respect, I would introduce and go to the specific question which you posed. What is the role of the EU funds? How the European funds can help in Central and Eastern Europe? Of course, since it's coming and it's a common fund, could have a big influence on especially on the policy development. On one hand, I would very much emphasize that we still need a policy support facility in these countries. So it's a country-specific policy support facility could be very much welcomed in these countries, because we need to explain in their own languages for the public administration. Second point, it would be the role of research and innovation. Those countries need to step into the pathway where they are more innovators. So we need Horizon Europe to come in. But Horizon Europe should be more, let's state it like this, to have a positive discrimination towards those countries. We need to give a helping hand to those countries and engaging them more in Horizon projects, because today the quota is low. So what we can do, we have to impose some measures and some indicators how we engage those countries. And let me also explain here that it's needed to engage them in a joint programming initiative. The countries, they just realize what are the role of the partnerships. So we need to engage them positively, and then we need to involve them in partnerships. And then my last point, it would be with the recovery funds in general. There is a need in these countries some structural changes. If we want to involve structural changes, yes, we need the policy support, and we need that the funds to be in a use of systemic change, and for that one we need a common approach and synergy. And we started with Wolfgang Butcher explanation how the CAP could help. Of course, we need to look also how the Research and Innovation Fund, the Cohesion Regional Funds, and of course the Rural Development Funds can be connected, and they can help this purpose of even the purpose of partnering. I will stop here to not to take longer the time. Maybe we can come back with questions, but these are which I see as a great tool and could help in general in the Central and Eastern European countries. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Bana Kovac, for these explanations. I think connecting the EU instruments and creating synergies between them is very important. Let me now ask my dear colleague Elisabetta Balzi from the Joint Research Center to come into the debate and briefly also explain what specifically the Joint Research Center is doing to support the rollout of bioeconomy policies in the EU. Please, Elisabetta.
Thank you very much, Peter, and good morning to all participants. So we have heard from the previous speakers how a sustainable and circular bioeconomy, as promoted by the European Bioeconomy Strategy, can play a key role to drive a green transition called by our European Green Deal and also to facilitate the recovery after the COVID crisis. And this was recognized recently in the Strategic Foresight report that the Commission published. So the bioeconomy is key to achieve our Green Deal objectives. First, to meet the increased ambition in climate targets, 55% reductions of emissions by 2030. Second, to provide livelihoods and resilience at local level. And third, to preserve and restore our environment. And the bioeconomy will be critical in the recovery because it can provide an opportunity for smart investments which can improve the position of many workers at local bio-based sectors. Now, the instruments for this green transition and recovery are already in place. The new Next Generation EU program will provide 750 billion euros of investment in the green and digital transitions. And we heard from President von der Leyen in her State of the Union address last week that 37% of Next Generation EU will be spent on the European Green Deal. Now, national and regional bioeconomy strategies and action plans are key for green growth and recovery. And we know that the EU Bioeconomy Action Plan actually focuses on deploying local bioeconomies across Europe. And indeed, this green transition needs to take place locally, based on local resources, responding to local needs, and involving primary producers with a just and fair transition. So far, bioeconomy strategy have already been developed by 12 European countries and more than 50 regions, and including important macro-regional initiatives, like we heard from Barna on the BioEast initiative. And the European Commission Knowledge Center for Bioeconomy systematically follows the development of these national regional strategies with interactive dashboards. Some member states, as we have heard from Professor Fava, have already put in place national action plans on the bioeconomy for recovery from the COVID crisis. And this is really a leading example that was shown by Italy. And how now can the Commission further support national green recovery plans? The Commission can help the member states in designing and implementing their green recovery plans by federating efforts, facilitating exchanges of knowledge and best practices, and particularly in the area of the bioeconomy. Since the origin of the EU Bioeconomy Strategy, the Commission has been closely collaborating with the member states on the development and implementation of the national strategies. Currently, the Commission supports the member states in developing the recovery plans in general through the new resilience and recovery facilities, but more specifically in the area of the bioeconomy, the Commission is going to launch 2 new important initiatives to support the member states in the deployment of their bioeconomies for a green transition and recovery. First, a European Bioeconomy Policy Forum of member states will be launched to bring together the responsible ministry from all member states to engage in dialogue on the role of a sustainable and circular bioeconomy in the green transition and the post-COVID recovery, and to exchange best practices in bioeconomy policymaking. Second, a bioeconomy policy support facility will be established to help member states develop and implement national bioeconomy strategies. And there will be a focus also on supporting Central and Eastern Europe countries in realizing the full potential of their local bioeconomies. Finally, the Commission will continue to provide the enhanced knowledge base on the bioeconomy through our Knowledge Center for Bioeconomy. For example, foresights and analysis on the bioeconomy transitions towards sustainability, resilience, and recovery are currently ongoing. We are also going to launch very soon a monitoring system for the EU bioeconomy, which will follow the progress of a responsible bioeconomy under economic, social, and environmental aspects. And overall, we hope that this can support further policymaking actions, also at national and regional level, for the bioeconomy to deliver on the Green Deal and on the recovery. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you so much, Elisabetta, for explaining what JRC is doing, what the EU is doing in implementing our EU bioeconomy strategy, in supporting member states also in developing their national strategies. All this must be based on innovation, on knowledge, and thank you also for JRC's contribution to creating that basis. Now, sorry that we missed in the beginning of the panel debate 5 minutes. I therefore didn't say very much about the polling tool which we have, but thank you for having participated also in that polling tool. Geographical balance is relatively well attained. We have participants really from all regions in Europe, and the bioeconomy does play an important role in all regions of Europe, even though the focus of the individual bioeconomy activities differs substantially from region to region. We have, in addition to that, also asked 2 content-related questions. The first one was, what is the major opportunity the bioeconomy has to offer in the recovery context? Here, the majority of you answered that it is the provision of innovative solutions for the green transition, very much aligned to what Executive Vice President Timmermans said this morning in the plenary session on the European Green Deal. The second question is related to which dimensions of sustainability could the bioeconomy, where could it have the greatest impact? Is it environment, social, economy? Obviously, all 3 of these dimensions were referred to. The fourth answer, all 3 of them, the majority of colleagues is of the opinion that this is really the specific characteristic of the bioeconomy, that it can make contributions to all 3 dimensions of the bioeconomy. So that's very, very helpful. Short 2 questions to the panelists we have obtained through the chat. One of them is, what is the priority list within the bioeconomy, and which solutions, technologies should we focus on, especially for creating jobs and helping the environment? Would one of you like to come in on that question? What are the priorities in the bioeconomy? Christine Lang, maybe? Yes, please.
Yeah, I probably don't know all the priorities, but just from the German perspective, what we see now is that we are planning to reduce the coal mining and abandon it altogether. And one of the priorities should be to build up jobs in those regions of Germany, and bioeconomy industries and services could very well feel such a space that comes up when you get rid of old technologies. And I would like to see bioeconomy come into that to replace and substitute the old industries.
Thank you. That's a very, very good thought. Bana Kovac, please.
On the priority, I would say, especially from the perspective of Central Eastern European countries, the layer or the sector which it's firsthand it's affected and should be affected by the bioeconomy change is the public policy, public administration, the ministries. So there I would see a role to help them in each country, that the ministries start to discuss with each other, and there is a layer, a sector of people who understand the same thing under the bioeconomy. So the different ministries start to discuss together. And of course, you might say that, oh, after 10 years in the EU discussing bioeconomy, how come that some countries are not yet at that level? But I think that it's lot depends from the public administration, those who are prescribing and developing the programs in the countries for the private sector. They need to understand this, and in the Central Eastern Europe, it's an important part. And
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
I will stop it here.
Thank you very much. The role of the public administration is important at, I guess, at all levels, EU, national, local, to translate strategies also into concrete action and underpin them with support for investments. Fabio Fava, one question addressed to you was also related to your statement and asked regarding investments on the 5 flagships you have mentioned. How do you consider that this should be managed? What role will public funding play in that, and what governance instruments would steer this process?
Yes, thank you. This is a very, very important question, of course. We don't know yet. What is sure that is that we have private money ready on the 4 major flagships that I mentioned. So the actors are ready to invest for part of the cost. The rest, of course, should came from the public administrations. I'm thinking about the ministerial, the ministries, the ministerial people who are currently preparing the recovery plans. We have an interministerial task force working on this, but also the regions. They have money coming from structural funds, and they can be put in place in synergies with the other. And this is the reason why we prepare a very simple document in which we place in 10 pages these ideas, and with all the information required for allowing this administration to check and include these potential initiatives in their planning, because we need to align things, we need to align instruments for supporting such a ready to be implemented initiatives. They are ready on the territories. Some of them are working on the whole territory, mobilizing the 21 regions that we have. Of course, these were 4 or 5 major initiatives, concrete, but the implementation action plan that we produce as other activities, of course, as initiatives, other priorities, more ambitious for the coming 5 years. But I focus my intervention on the concrete things. And now we are cooperating with the regions, with the ministries for trying to have these flagships in the priority that they are putting on the recovery plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Fava. Excuse me for not giving Elisabetta the floor again. You have heard that we would be cut off, I guess, in 4 minutes. Therefore, let me already wrap up. I think this will not be the last opportunity to discuss this, but we will continue the discussion on the role of the bioeconomy in the context of the economic recovery process. Many of the messages you have given are very encouraging and stimulating. Thank you again to the 2 channel directors who have introduced this session, and Wolfgang Burtscher, who confirmed that the member states have to make use of the instruments in the common agricultural policy. There are opportunities in the CAP strategic plans to take that on. Thank you also for having provided the examples, for instance, from Italy, that the bioeconomy already does play a role in national recovery plans. That's very important. And I think we have also heard from Bana Kovac that this can be rolled out at a wider scale, including also in the countries of Central and Eastern Europe, who have a particularly good resource endowment. Now, the discussion on this topic will continue. Christine Lange is a co-chair of the organizing committee of the Global Bioeconomy Summit. There will be a plenary session on this topic and a specific thematic workshop on this topic, which we will have. And we will also, as Elisabetta Balzi, my colleague, mentioned, convene a meeting with member states, the European Bioeconomy Policy Forum in November 2020 to continue the discussion of the bioeconomy in the context of recovery. Let me, last but not least, thank you again to the two channel directors for opening this session. Thank you very much for the panelists to have joined us in this virtual world and accepting the very short time which was available to discuss this today. I think all of you made excellent contributions. Let me also thank the IT specialists who have given us the platform to do this webinar. And let me also thank my colleagues in the Commission and my team here in DG Research and Innovation, and specifically Roman Brenner, who has taken the lead in designing this session. I think we have heard a lot of encouraging words. Sustainable economy needs the bioeconomy. With that, let me thank you also, all participants, for having joined this discussion. And please stay healthy and safe. Thank you for your interest in this session, and have an excellent day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.